France, Ireland, and Romania. Mental health and psychosocial support are as essential as food or shelter, but it remains underfunded and poorly integrated into Europe's crisis and disaster preparedness systems. This is important. And this is particularly stark in Ukraine, where the conflict has inflicted deep psychological wounds and where our research reveals that the scale of the mental health crisis. So here are some numbers on that. 56% of the people say that they need psychological support, yet only 19 have been able to access that. 4 in 5 say that they or their loved ones have experienced traumatic events since the escalation of the conflict. The pressure is especially heavy on more vulnerable groups. Displaced people, older adults, children, survivors of violence, and persons with disabilities that are all experiencing psychological strain. People told us that safe spaces and childcare were critical to recovery, lifelines that restore daily routine and can reduce stress. These are the daily realities, and if you think about this night's latest developments in Kiev and many other cities in Ukraine, they are the daily realities for families facing uncertainty, but also for volunteers that are offering help and for communities that are still stuck between responding to ongoing bombardments and trying to recover to some kind of normalcy. Across Europe, our findings also show that we are not mentally prepared for the next crisis. Only 1 in 7 people feel mentally ready to face a sudden crisis, such as conflict or disaster. In most countries surveyed, more than 1 in 5, or more accurately, 23%, people said that they worry about crisis daily or weekly, a level of ongoing stress that affects the well-being in itself. On the good news side is that people really want to help. 4 in 5 respondents said that they would be willing to offer emotional support to someone struggling, but nearly half fear that they will be the ones to make things worse for the ones they help. 6 in 10 said that with some basic training, they would feel much more capable of helping others. So those are the good news. And we've seen what happens when we invest in critical mental health gap. Across Europe and Central Asia last year, the IFRC network delivered 2.4 million mental health and psychosocial support services. This is part of a 9.4 million receiving support around these services globally. In Ukraine and in neighboring countries, we launched the largest ever mental health initiative where our team supported millions affected by the conflict, including through helplines, counseling, group sessions, and training in psychosocial first aid. Sorry, that is psychological first aid. We've also trained tens of thousands of first responders, including our volunteers, teachers, health workers, and civil protection staff, to provide psychological first aid and basic psychosocial support. These skills strengthen both immediate response and long-term community resilience. When people receive early, practical mental health support, it reduces distress. It prevents escalation and helps families recover faster. It also eases pressures on the health systems. So our report offers a clear call. Mental health should not be a missing pillar across Europe. Indeed, it is a critical component to crisis preparedness and response, and it's a gap that we urgently need to close. And as the conflict in Ukraine continues, it shows what is at stake. Behind every destroyed building, there is also this invisible ruin, the toll on people's minds and hearts. And rebuilding must start there too. Invest early, act locally, and recognize that every conversation, every act of care help societies withstand the shocks ahead. Thank you very much, and happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Birgit. And I'm just looking to the list of speakers. I wonder if Christian, maybe Dr. Fahmi Anna would like to intervene now, if isn't connected.
Yes, he's there.
Okay, maybe we can hear from Dr. Hannah, as we have been speaking a lot about mental health, humanitarian response, and then I'll open the floor to questions.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Would you like me to do an intervention related to Ukraine now,
no,
related
just,
to the World Mental Health Day?
I know you had some remarks to make, so if you can do it, and then we will open the floor to questions on Ukraine and mental health or mental health. So just please go ahead.
So your complete brief, Fahmi, please.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Colleagues, today's theme on World Mental Health Day is simple and urgent, as kindly shared by my colleagues from UN Women and I4C, access to mental health and psychosocial support in humanitarian emergencies. It's true, the world is facing not only unprecedented humanitarian crisis, but also humanitarian assistance in all emergencies today. That 67 million people with mental disorders living in conflict, disaster, or displacement settings. Their needs are not marginal, they are among the most affected with every emergency. We know that coordination and progress is real and possible. In 2019, 6 years ago, fewer than half of all emergencies has an MHPSS coordination mechanism. Today, it's 71%. That proves that investment can make a difference in people care and better referral. 85% of emergencies report to WHO Mental Health Atlas that they are integrating mental health and psychosocial support. However, quality and service coverage fall short. WHO is supporting mental health in 40+ emergencies today, backed by a global interagency search roster of 600 specialists that we have the pleasure and privilege to co-chair together with our colleagues in I4C. And the IASC, Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Minimum Service Package, represent our gold standard for rapid coordinated action in any emergency response. Colleagues, in 2024, WHO provided life-saving psychotropic medicines to 2.1 million people in emergencies such as in Sudan, Chad, and Ethiopia, and helped in building mental health system in places such as Myanmar, Syria, and Lebanon. However, in 2025, these requests for life-saving psychotropic medication has fallen short by 94%. Not because we have less people with mental health conditions in emergencies, but because there are competing priorities among emergencies and funding become more constrained and in some situations vanished. In 2024, member states of WHO adopted a milestone resolution at the World Health Assembly, the first in history to call for mental health integration in preparedness, response, and recovery of emergencies. Colleagues, the most powerful aid can be a safe place to tell a story. The most common condition in emergency is not a physical wound, but grief. A broken bone may heal in weeks, a destroyed home can be built in months, but mental health effects, if ignored, can last a lifetime or even generations. People cannot survive, as my colleague in I4C said, on food, water, and shelter and all. With mental health and psychosocial support, people can cope, recover, and heal. Access turn numbers into neighbor, a parent who sleep again, a child back in class, a responder who can keep serving, measuring success by those who find care. Colleagues, for all humanitarian responders, we need to integrate mental health into operations. To all governments, we need to invest in mental health preparedness, it pay back in well-being and economic recovery. And finally, to funders, mental health and psychosocial support is a life-saving measure. WHO World Mental Health Day page today include feature stories, resources, social media asset, videos, and most importantly, stories from the front lines in Afghanistan, Syria, Myanmar, among others, showcasing work of scaling up and building back better, sustainable mental health care during and after emergencies. Colleagues, let's ensure together that we renew our commitment today for the value of mental health. I wish all of you health, safety, and mental well-being on the World Mental Health Day.
Thank you very much. And on the same note, I would like to also recall that we've just distributed the message of the Secretary General for World Mental Health Day. You have it in your mailboxes. So I'll open the floor to questions, but I would like please to ask you if you can prioritize the question on Ukraine, and then also we will take mental health just after. So I'm looking, yeah, Robin, Agence France Presse, please.
Good morning. This is a question for Sabine Fraser. The rise in civilian harm this year that you spoke about, does that have a particular impact on women? And secondly, what is that rise in civilian harm down to? Is it just the volume of missiles and drones, or is it the actual targeting of civilians? Thank you.
Sabine?
Thank you very much for that question. What we have seen is, yes, the increase of civilian harm in terms of casualties, but what we've also seen is the increasing targeting of energy infrastructure and other forms of infrastructure. What happens when that occurs is that women are also disproportionately affected by that. We carried out a study earlier this year about the destruction of energy infrastructure and how that affects women in particular. And of course, then women have different, it affects women differently than it does men, because of course women are spending a lot more time at home. So they are of course responsible for the food in the house, for example, the electricity in the house. And so when you have attacks, as you did this morning here in Kiev, where the household no longer has electricity and water, this has a huge effect on women who are leading their families while a large number of men are fighting on the front lines. I would also say that the attacks on infrastructure in terms of transport has a huge effect on women. So also parts of the metro are not working today. Women tend to use public transport more than men. The effect on the trains, which we're also now seeing in the country. So yes, the attacks on the infrastructure are having a predominant effect on women in Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Sabine. Other questions, particularly on Ukraine from the room or on mental health? I don't see any. Let me go to the platform. I don't see any either. So if that's the case, thank you very much to all our speakers. And again, please have a look at the statement of the Secretary General. And I'd like now to ask UNHCR colleagues to come to the podium. Thank you very much, Birgit. So let me welcome Eugene, who has brought with us, yes, please, with her Abdurraouf Gnonkonde, I hope I pronounce it well, who is the UNHCR Regional Director for West and Central Asia. Sorry, Africa, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. UNHCR, so I'll start again. Eugene brought us Abdurraouf Gnonkonde, the UNHCR Regional Director for West and Central Africa. And you're here to tell us about the international support needed to advance protection and solution for the forcibly displaced in the Sahel. You have the floor, sir. Thank you. Yes, please.
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me this morning. About 4 million people are now displaced across Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and neighboring countries, around 2/3 more than 5 years ago, reflecting insecurity, limited access to services, a livelihood, and the effect of climate change. While most displaced people in the region remain within the countries, cross-border movements are becoming more frequent, pressuring host communities and national systems. These onward movements highlight the urgent need to expand assistance and enable people to remain closer to home and avoid dangerous journeys. The insecurity across the region is exposing people to violence, forced recruitment, movement restriction, and arbitrary detention. Women and children represent 80% of the forcibly displaced population in the region, and gender-based violence remains a critical and pervasive concern. According to the West and Central Africa Interagency Protection Monitoring System, The number of people impacted by related incident has significantly increased this year. Over 14,000 agents, and gender-based violence remains a critical and pervasive concern. According to the West and Central Africa Interagency Protection Monitoring System, the number of people impacted by related incident has significantly increased this year. Over 14,800 schools had closed in the region by mid-2025, leaving 3 million children without access to learning or safe space. Forcibly displaced youth face increased protection and livelihood challenges, including forced recruitment, trafficking, and limited access to job opportunities, increasing the risk of taking dangerous journeys beyond the region. Across the region, over 900 health facilities have been also forced to close, leaving millions without critical care. Food insecurity has become a growing driver of displacement. The share of displaced people and host community members citing food insecurity as a cause of their movement has doubled in recent years. Climate-related shocks further amplify risk, intensifying competition over scarce natural resources, such as land and water, creating additional barriers to peaceful coexistence and social cohesion with host communities. UNHCR priority is to strengthen protection, inclusion, resilience, and solutions, supporting states, but also communities to manage displacement while fostering stability and self-reliance. However, humanitarian access and funding are both strained. In the Sahel, humanitarian needs have risen sharply while resources have declined significantly since 2022. In 2025, UNHCR requires $409.7 million to cover humanitarian need in the Sahel countries. But so far, as of today, only 32% have been raised. Critical activities, including registration, documentation, education, health, and shelter, have been drastically impacted. Over 212,000 refugees and asylum seekers in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger are not yet registered, limiting their access to essential services and heightening their risk of arbitrary detention and harassment. Despite these challenges, communities across the Sahel demonstrate resilience and solidarity. UNHCR data shows that in Mali, 90% of the displaced people feel a strong sense of integration, with local communities generously sharing land and resources. In Burkina Faso, local conflict resolution mechanisms support coexistence between displaced and host population. All Sahel countries are parties to 1951 Refugee Convention and its 1967 protocol and have adopted national asylum laws that provide a framework, a legal framework for refugee status determination and inclusion, including the right to work and freedom of movement. All have also ratified the Kampala Convention on Internal Displacement. UNHCR is calling for a renewed and strengthened international commitment to address the crisis in the Central Sahel. Countries in the region cannot face these challenges alone. Protecting millions of displaced families and securing a safer future demands more than words. It requires unified, sustained international action and true solidarity with the Sahel people. I thank you.